Welcome to our Cybersafe Digest weekly podcast, episode 17. Each week, we will unfold the most recent cyber attacks and will provide you with valuable insights on how to shield your business from these threats, along with practical steps and tips to enhance your cybersecurity.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Cybersafe Digest, edition 17. Welcome. Thank you for coming along. I'm Martin Roberts, Managing Director of New Ways, and I'm here with
Toby Stevenson, Chief Technology Officer at New Ways.
Well, actually, when I say I'm here with, that's probably not quite fair. I'm actually in Nottingham at home, and Toby, you're in?
I'm in the office in Derby today.
Lovely. Which is slightly different destinations to where you were last week.
Yes, I would say it's probably not quite as warm as Orlando here today, no. But we do have some sunshine, which is always a good thing.
You brought it back with you, Terry.
I did, especially for all the folks here.
Yes, and I'm enjoying it too. I think the distance here is about 17 miles from the office. I a quick look at trying to work out the distance between where you were in Orlando and where we are now, and somewhat different.
Yes, I think it's probably about 4,500 miles. I think it's probably something like that. So, yeah, slight difference. It's probably also not going to be 29 degrees this afternoon, which it was last week.
Oh, only wish. I can only wish. Now then, I guess we've always said that this podcast is aimed at people who are generally responsible for IT in a business, but not necessarily execute IT. So, you might be the CFO, you might be the CEO. You might be in finance responsible for IT. And we've tried to always keep ourselves a bit grounded in that world. We talked last week about this conference you went to, which is something really wouldn't necessarily be a direct interest to somebody running a business, the detail of it. But absolutely, it's going to be important to them sometime in the future, which is why we talked about it. And I guess some questions for you, Toby, is really, you saw things last week, you heard about things last week, and no doubt learned about these things as well. What, for you, appears to be an emerging thing that we'll be talking about an awful lot directly with customers in 12 months' time or less? That will become the big thing. Anything?
Yeah, and it's not necessarily a new thing. So as a reminder, the event was Zero Trust World. It was talking all around this whole mindset of a zero trust mentality, which is a position of deny by default, allow by exception. And the idea being is that if something doesn't have the rights to run on the network, it won't run. So unlike a normal environment where, I think they commented there's something like 700 executable files on your laptop as it comes out of the box, and all of those can run on your PC. And actually, do all of those things need to run? And that's kind of the flip that a zero trust mindset brings. It's, well, actually, I don't need all of those 700 things to run. I'm going to control those, and I'm only going to allow 200 to run. And those that run will run in specific contexts or specific have specific guardrails around them. So certain programs might not need access to the internet, so we'll stop it. And the idea being that this then levels up the security, because you say, well, this program can't talk to this program, which it could do ordinarily in Windows. So a great example they give, and at the risk of running too deep and techy, is that Microsoft Word has no call to speak to PowerShell, which is a scripting language or a scripting environment, yet it can do by default. And it's actually the reason why a lot of historic ransomware attacks have been successful. An email's received with a weaponized Word attachment. That Word attachment, when you open it, it wants to run a macro, which runs some PowerShell script, which downloads some bad stuff off the internet, and boom, you've got a ransomware infection on your machine. In a zero trust world, you could set things in place to stop Word talking to PowerShell, because it doesn't need to. There's no There may be niche cases, but there's no legitimate reason why they should talk to each other. And you can also prevent PowerShell from talking to the internet. So there's kind of like two mechanisms in that in itself, which could prevent a ransomware attack, even if it gets through all of your other levels of defense, gets through your email gateway, gets through your firewall, gets past your endpoint antivirus, gets past the user education. There's additional layers in there that Zero Trust brings by only allowing the things that have been discreetly permitted in advance. Okay,
so I guess a bit of the takeaway from that is you get things with your PC and your laptop and the programs that run on it that are intended to give maximum convenience, if you want to say that.
Yeah.
But there's a risk inherent in that. And rather than building out, you've got to start building in to make sure it's less open.
Yeah, and I think probably the big thing that I took away from this conference is actually this technology to allow and block applications running has been around for a long time. But unless you've got a very static and regimented environment, it's really, really difficult and resource heavy. I need lots of people to define and manage it and keep it supported. It's just been out of the reach of small to medium-sized businesses. And what we're starting to see now is almost like that democratization of application allow listing. It's becoming much more accessible, much more easier to manage and handle. And I think that's probably one of the biggest takeaways. As a principle, it's been around for a long time, but I think it's just like a lot of technology, it becomes easier to consume over time. And I think this is one of those.
Yeah, I guess a bit of a side thought really there is that, if you're a larger business and you've got the resources or you buy in the resources from an MSP or a support company and those things are looked after, that's great with the software. But if you're a small business and you're starting off, you can't concentrate and spend the money like that. And they're handing you a huge risk and make you more vulnerable. Or almost out of the box, which is unfortunate to say the least.
Exactly, and it's a really strong preventative measure because you're only allowing the things that you have decided or decreed are safe to run and are needed by the business. They had a speaker from it was US federal government. I can't remember if it was Secret Service or Treasury or something like that, but he basically made the statement that $1 spent on prevention is worth 10 on detection and response.
Fine. Yeah, makes absolute sense. Absolute sense. I guess for people we talk to, the question is to the people who support them, whether it's an internal IT team or an MSP, is what's their attitude? We as a business take this very seriously. It becomes a default position. If you've got a question to ask your MSP or your IT department, is tell us what your attitude is. Even ask, hey, what's Zero Trust? And see what the reaction is.
Yeah, and say, how are you protecting my environment from malicious code and bad things happening?
Okay, right then. So now, one thing that comes out of I think one of the things we have to say, that going to these conferences, it all sounds really glamorous, jetting across the world. I mean, we were, Toby, we know you were invited there.
Yes.
And that was supported by the organisation there as well. And that's a really great compliment to your knowledge and experience and our reputation. But these things always seem glamorous, but they're actually exhausting, aren't they?
They are really hard work. Yeah. It sounds, I mentioned 29 degrees. Yeah, I got to see about 15 minutes of 29 degrees the whole time I was there. You're in a darkened conference facility, so it could be day or night. You could be at the bottom of the ocean for all you know. And it's early starts. Long days, lots of content, lots of walking around as you go from talk to talk. So yeah, it is a lot of work. It's very exhausting, but it's a good thing to do. It's very educational.
Okay, here's a left field question for you. All these conferences, there's vendors there, and they have some wonderful freebies and giveaways, goodies. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, having to go overseas and there being a limited allowance as to what you can bring back, you have to tell me which was your favourite, or did you bring anything back?
Actually, I didn't bring an awful lot of stuff back. There was a few people giving T-shirts and things like that away, which I brought back. I unusually got a cool bag. So,
but of course, yeah,
as you do. But no, not much this time. Unfortunately, a lot of the giveaways were US orientated. They got US power leads on them, so there was little incentive for those things. But interesting, actually, probably one of the biggest giveaways that they had was they had a fully spec'd up gaming PC, and it was a competition. And the first person to hack into it and claim it as their own got the machine. So that was very interesting. Yeah, there was a group of people kind of sat in a corner with their hoodies on, desperately trying to get into this machine.
And I presume that, strangely enough, in front of their eyes were letters, zeros and ones, floating down the screen.
Yeah, look just like the Matrix. Look just like the Matrix. Yeah.
Okay. Now then. Now, new acronyms then. What are the things that we'll be hearing about, again, in the next 12 months where should become common acronyms? I'm always amazed that I go to all these conferences and I come away with a whole new acronym. What was your favourite this time?
Yeah, so there's a couple of acronyms I think we'll start to hear more and more about, and there's a couple of phrases or statements or bits of terminology. So acronyms, ZTNA, which is Zero Trust Network Access, and that's part of a SASE solution, so SASE. These are all about controlling...
Hang on. That's SASE. You're going to give that full...
Yeah. So Secure Access Service Edge.
Okay, and now let's just do that in real layman's terms. Secure Access Service Edge. What is it?
It's essentially a firewall in the cloud. You have this service, and at the moment, and this will be something that virtually all the listeners can attest to. Yes. You have your office environment and you sit behind the company firewall, and you have certain protections at the boundary which are non-negotiable, non-avoidable. But then you go home or you go traveling and you leave those network-based protections behind. And SASE goes some way to closing that loop, basically giving you that kind of firewall level protection, but from any location.
Okay. Is it like a bit like a VPN?
It is a bit like a VPN, and that's where that zero trust network access comes from. That's like a VPN, but again, it's allowing a consistent level of access, and you can define specific parameters. It's a little bit more granular than what most people would normally expect a VPN to be at the moment.
Okay, so we're going down an acronym rabbit hole here. If you notice that, I said VPN.
Yeah, virtual private network. Yeah, this is that dial-up connection you make to get back into the office.
Okay, right. So I apologise, folks, for doing that. So this is the thing about acronyms. They become common parlance, and to techies around the world, the VPN, my goodness, that's old hat, isn't it? That's you know what that is, but not everybody does.
No, very true.
Yeah, okay. True. So that was so let's just take a couple of steps back here. We've just gone to VPN. We were SASE before that, and prior to that, we were talking about what?
ZTNA, so Zero Trust Network Access.
Okay,
which is basically a just-in-time access to the resources that you need, whether they be inside the network, whether they be 365 resources. Yeah. But the idea, again, they fall into this zero trust mindset because they assume nothing and make you validate and verify every time you connect.
Okay, and okay, that makes sense. Any other acronyms?
Not so much an acronym, but I think one of the phrase that we'll start to hear more and more, and again, as we talk about zero trust, which in itself is a is a not an acronym, but it's a statement. Would be deny by default. I think that's a big one. So again, it's building on that mindset of don't allow anything because that's how it comes out of the box or because it's easy, but actually only allow the things that you want. So lock everything down and then peel it back as you can. And that applies to all sorts. It applies to firewall access and what you can access on your file server and in SharePoint, as well as what you can do on your PC, which is a zero trust endpoint solution. Okay. And again, taking away those admin rights, which we touched on in previous podcasts. Again, that's all part of that thing. Again, only exposing the things that you absolutely need and removing everything else to kind of minimize the blast radius that any problem might cause.
Okay. Of course, that requires somewhat of an understanding of what you get, and again, relying on your IT department. Right? Your MSP on your
exactly. It's something that's it definitely falls into the category of easier said than done, but I think that the rewards are definitely worth it.
Okay, right. So thank you very much for that, Toby. And we're glad you're back. And that's you had a lovely time in Orlando. Just one final thing to talk about this week. Actually, this week we came to our attention over the weekend was. Beautifully, I'm throwing this at you a bit left field actually, is we got sight of a beautifully crafted phishing email to one of our customers this week.
Yes.
We won't obviously mention who it was, but I had to read through to say, well, what's the problem? And then I realised what the problem was. It was fantastic. They'd used all the right logos. The wording was beautiful. It was very, very convincing, and it was introducing a large corporation or an introduction to a large corporation. They knew the person, they'd done their research, and could have been very dangerous. Except the customer on this occasion didn't recognise the name and forwarded it to the supposed company that had sent it, and it came onto our radar because of that.
Yes.
It was impressive, I thought, didn't you?
Have I
got it wrong?
Yeah. Well, I can see why at the outset it might have set alarm bells ringing. I think when you actually look at it, it was perhaps less concerning, and I think it's all been reconciled now as to the whys and the wherefores on it. So I won't get into too much detail, but yes, that is definitely a thing. And I think probably the key point here is, if you receive a phishing email or an impersonation email, because actually this is probably more of an impersonation rather than a phish, because they weren't actually pretending to be the client organisation. They were. It was a completely different name in the
I noticed
sender address. So it wasn't what you might call a phish in the traditional terms, but certainly it could have misrepresented and have encouraged some particular behaviour and activity. So I think probably the thing is, have a think about what your response activity to such an email might be, and who do you tell, and when do you tell them, and do you make sure that everybody in the organisation knows that this is what we do. So if we get a phishing email or an impersonation email, we do X, and we report it to such and such, and we do this and we do that, and we don't do these things like reply back, or we don't click on any links, or all those kinds of good things. So I think it just shows how in a way kind of good, because people have been a bit more vigilant. But it shows the kind of world that we're in, where there's all these different multi-vector and multi-angled attacks or potential attacks that exist.
I mean, I guess the takeaway for me was that obviously I first viewed it on my mobile phone.
Yes.
You say mobile phone, also I don't know. It sounds a bit old. On my device, on my handheld device, and of course that we've always talked about this. The amount what you can view and how it looks on a phone. And at that point, it was like, oh yes, I can see. Well, why is this being brought to my attention? And then my second view is to go, well, hang on a sec. Now I go and look at the email address, the sender email address. And that was the first giveaway to me. It's like, well, it's got nothing to do with them. So why would you do that? And that's my next step. But to the uninitiated, there may have been, was there a link in that email to take somebody somewhere?
I think there was a link in there, yes.
Okay. If we talk about the real estate on a phone, a handheld device, you could be, you could see that and go, oh yeah, I know that company. I'll respond, and it make it second nature to go and look at the email address and say, well, is it actually from the people we bought it from? They'd use a different email address, which might have been considered to be okay. But no, I thought it was an interesting thing. So
yeah, well, I mean, just spiraling off that a little bit. Actually, one of the things that we spoke around at the conference was how attackers are. I think we've touched on this on a previous podcast anyway, and we talk about it with customers as well. But character replacement in URLs and domains, and how using characters from different character sets. So some Cyrillic characters. There's a character that looks like an A in the traditional keyboard layout. Apparently, substituting lowercase L's for an I is a common one as well, because an uppercase I looks like a lowercase L in the font that most web browsers use. So again, just talking about things like that, and actually, one of their takeaways was to go off and register all the permutations. If you've got an I in your domain name or an L in your domain name, go and register all the various permutations, because what will happen is that if you get a targeted attack, the attacker will have done that registration and it will look like a legitimate website.
You don't think this is just a thing by domain registrars to get more money out of people? So I've got 400 domains registered for my company now, because I've got to take into account all of those. Maybe so.
Maybe. But yeah, so
maybe now's the time to become a domain registrar, perhaps.
Maybe. But yeah, I think the practicality may not be there, but I think the intent is solid. So
sure.
You protect yourself because you own the variations.
You do. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Toby. Glad to have you back, and glad that you enjoyed it and you arrived back safe. Much appreciated. So that's episode 17 complete for this week. Thank you very much indeed. Take a look at cybersafe.co.uk. There's some resources there, a bit more about the podcast, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you, Toby.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you, everyone. We've reached the end of episode 17 of our Cybersafe Digest weekly podcast. Thank you very much for listening, and to make sure you don't miss out on our future episodes, hit that subscribe button on Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcast. For more cybersecurity wisdom and resources, head over to our website at cybersafe.co.uk. See you next Thursday.